Analyze Craft and Structure from After 20 Years by O. Henry. The following passage is an abridged version of After 20 Years, a short story by O. Henry set in New York City. In the story, a mysterious man is waiting at night in a doorway for a meeting with a friend he has not seen in 20 years. A police officer approaches, and the man in the doorway explains why he is there. As they speak, the man strikes a match to light his cigar, revealing his face. Read the passage, then answer the questions. 20 years ago tonight, said the man, I dined here at Big Joe Brady's with Jimmy Wells, my best chum, and the finest chap in the world. He and I were raised here in New York, just like two brothers, together. I was 18 and Jimmy was 20. The next morning, I was to start for the West to make my fortune. You couldn't have dragged Jimmy out of New York. He thought it was the only place on earth. Well, we agreed that night that we would meet here again, exactly 20 years from that date and time, no matter what our conditions might be, or from what distance we might have to come. We figured that in 20 years, each of us ought to have our destiny worked out, and our fortunes made, whatever they were going to be. It sounds pretty interesting, said the policeman. Rather a long time between meets, though, it seems to me. Haven't you heard from your friends since you left? Well, yes, for a time we corresponded, said the other. But after a year or two we lost track of each other. You see, the West is a pretty big proposition, and I kept hustling around over it pretty lively. But I know Jimmy will meet me here if he's alive, for he always was the truest, stanchest old chap in the world. He'll never forget. I came 1,000 miles to stand in this door tonight, and it's worth it if my old partner turns up. The waiting man pulled out a handsome watch, the lids of it set with small diamonds. 3 minutes to 10, he announced. It was exactly 10 o'clock when we parted here at the restaurant door. Did pretty well out west, didn't you? Asked the policeman. You bet. I hope Jimmy has done half as well. He was a kind of plodder, though, good fellow as he was. I've had to compete with some of the sharpest wits going to get my pile. A man gets in a groove in New York. It takes the West to put a razor edge on him. The policeman twirled his club and took a step or two. I'll be on my way. Hope your friend comes around all right. About 20 minutes the man waited, and then a tall man in a long overcoat, with collar turned up to his ears, hurried across from the opposite side of the street. He went directly to the waiting man. Is that you, Bob? He asked doubtfully. Is that you, Jimmy Wells? Cried the man in the door. Bless my heart! Exclaimed the new arrival, grasping both the other's hands with his own. It's Bob, sure as fate. I was certain I'd find you here if you were still in existence. Well, well, well. 20 years is a long time. The old restaurant's gone, Bob. I wish it had lasted, so we could have had dinner there. How has the West treated you, old man? Oh, bully, it has given me everything I asked it for. You've changed lots, Jimmy. I never thought you were so tall by 2 or 3 inches. Oh, I grew a bit after I was 20. Doing well in New York, Jimmy? Moderately. I have a position in one of the city departments. Come on, Bob, we'll go around to a place I know of and have a good long talk about old times. The two men started up the street, arm in arm. The man from the West, his egotism enlarged by success, was beginning to outline the history of his career. The other, submerged in his overcoat, listened with interest. At the corner stood a drugstore, brilliant with electric lights. When they came into this glare, each of them turned simultaneously to gaze upon the other's face. The man from the West stopped suddenly and released his arm. You're not Jimmy Wells, he snapped. 20 years is a long time, but not long enough to change a man's nose from a Roman to a pug. It sometimes changes a good man into a bad one, said the tall man. You've been under arrest for 10 minutes, Silky Bob. Chicago thinks you may have dropped over our way and wires us she wants to have a chat with you. Going quietly, are you? That's sensible. Now, before we go on to the station, here's a note I was asked to hand you. You may read it here at the window. It's from Patrolman Wells." The man from the west unfolded the little piece of paper handed him. His hand was steady when he began to read, but it trembled a little by the time he had finished. The note was rather short. "Bob, I was at the appointed place on time. When you struck the match to light your cigar, I saw it was the face of the man wanted in Chicago. Somehow I couldn't do it myself, so I went around and got a plainclothes man to do the job. Jimmy." This is the end of reading 1. Analyze craft and structure. Fictional narrative. Read the following fictional narrative, then answer the questions. Rosa liked to figure people out, but her Aunt Sophia, her father Tito's big sister, had always been a mystery to her. At big family gatherings, Sophia seemed to hang back, never saying all that much. She was quite a contrast to the other aunts, who ran right up to you to squeeze your face and yell how big you had grown. Rosa knew that Sophia was a successful doctor, busy all the time, loved by her patients. It was possible that when Rosa saw Sophia, she might just be tired. Still, Rosa couldn't help but think that she was as cold as a fish. Couldn't, that is, until the summer, Rosa went to stay at her grandmother's house. One rainy day, Rosa wandered aimlessly up to the attic and began poking around. Turning to look at an antique fan, she accidentally knocked over a dusty stack of books. As she began picking up the mess, something like an electric shock went through her. On the cover of one of the books, written in large letters, were the words, "My Diary," by Sophia. "Keep out!" Boredom vanished. Seating herself on the floor, leaning against a big suitcase, Rosa began to read. June 5th. Today was my brother Tito's birthday. Who knew a birthday could be so suspenseful? Tito loves animals, so the idea of giving him a puppy for his birthday might seem like a no-brainer. But my parents have been going back and forth about it for weeks. It's almost a year to the day that Muff died, and Tito was pretty broken up about losing her. They were constant companions. He walked her, fed her, groomed her. When the vet explained how ill she was, it hit him hard. I think 2 months went by before I saw him smile. So there was a big question mark hanging over the day. When Tito sees his birthday gift, is he going to burst out crying, throw a fit, or break into smiles? I have to say, though, I felt a little sour about the whole thing. Tito's the youngest, so it's only right that we all look out for him. But I mean, come on, at some point, he's going to have to learn to get through difficult times without 5 people all fussing over him and holding his hand. When Rachel and I had our big fight last year, I don't remember people saying much more than, "You'll get through it." I didn't let that little sour note spoil the whole day, though. I had a good time with Tito and his friends, playing video games in Tito's room and listening to some new music. Then the big moment came. Dad asked us all to come to the garage. We all filed up the driveway and lined up in front of the garage door. An odd silence fell. Tito's friends stood on the blacktop, shuffling and giggling a little. It was the end of the day, and the sun was beginning to let up, but I could still see the heat rising off the family car in little waves. Mom was watching Tito carefully. Dad, who's never good at speaking to a group, mumbled something about enjoying life's real gifts. Then he bent down, unlatched the garage door, and threw it open. Inside, the cutest little furball I'd ever seen started yapping and bouncing all over his crate. We all turned to look at Tito. He stood there silently, his mouth open in shock for a good minute. Then he turned and said, smile as wide as the sky, "I love him. Can I keep him?" That was a good moment. I won't forget it any time soon. Rosa closed her aunt's diary and felt grateful for the glimpse she had just had of her father as a sensitive little boy and of his big sister, her Aunt Sophia, who wasn't such a cold fish after all. This is the end of reading 2. Analyze craft and structure. Argumentative text. Read the following selection, then answer the questions. The plans for the new skate park in Jedson Park are a case of right idea, wrong location. A quick look at a map will show you why. Nobody disputes the need for a skate park. Roller skating and skateboarding are popular activities among the city's youth. Without an established, safe facility to go to, however, youngsters may be tempted to use prohibited, unsafe sites. To help them do the right thing, we need to provide them with a safe, well-regulated skate park, a place where they can socialize and exercise, an outlet for their energy, a showcase for their skills. So everybody agrees that we should build a skate park. Who could object to locating it at the old band shell in Jedson Park? The answer is anyone who is concerned with safety and convenience. Consider how young people will get to the proposed site. There is a bus stop nearby on Myrtle Boulevard, but the only direct route from there to the band shell crosses McCuder Parkway. The nearest bike stands are also across the parkway. Those wanting to use the new park will have to walk another 2 miles to find a safe crossing. There are other closer places to cross McCuder, but none of them are safe. Alternatively, if youngsters use the bus stop near the park entrance on Avita Street, they will have even farther to walk. Practically speaking, if we put the new skate park in such an inconvenient location, we may be discouraging the city's youth from using it at all. Alternatively, we are encouraging them to take risky shortcuts. Either way, we are working against the whole reason for a skate park: good, safe, fun. There is a simple alternative, though. The old fountain near the Avita Street entrance was once a beautiful landmark. However, it has been in bad repair for years. It is overgrown and unsightly, a site just waiting for renovation. The city should spend its money wisely and locate the new skate park at this site. This is the end of reading 3. Language development. Vocabulary. The Lagoon by Joseph Conrad. Read the following paragraph from Joseph Conrad's short story, The Lagoon. Then answer the questions. We ran our canoe on the white beach of a little bay close to a long tongue of land that seemed to bar our road, a long wooded cape going far into the sea. My brother knew that place. Beyond the cape, a river has its entrance, and through the jungle of that land there is a narrow path. We made a fire and cooked rice. Then we lay down to sleep on the soft sand in the shade of our canoe while she watched. No sooner had I closed my eyes than I heard her cry of alarm. We leaped up. The sun was halfway down the sky already, and coming in sight in the opening of the bay, we saw a prau manned by many paddlers. We knew it at once. It was one of our Rajah's praus. They were watching the shore and saw us. They beat the gong and turned the head of the prau into the bay. I felt my heart become weak within my breast. Diamelen sat on the sand and covered her face. There was no escape by sea. Language development, conventions and style, short story. Read the following passage, then answer the questions. His head held high, Roberto walked toward the podium, waving to his friends in the audience. The year had had its ups and downs, but he had made it, becoming class valedictorian. Mounting the steps, Roberto took his place before the microphone. After 4 years of listening to speakers at school assemblies and graduations, it was his turn. He was ready. Whatever difficulties he had passed through over those years were over. This moment vindicated his struggles. The long, uncertain climb was finished. He had arrived at the top of the mountain. Roberto had decided to begin his speech by thanking the person who had helped him most during this time. Clearing his throat, he began. 3 years ago, I wasn't sure that I'd be graduating today, much less addressing you as class valedictorian. Every day, I seemed headed toward greater uncertainty, like a ship without a rudder. There's one person who helped ensure that I would be speaking to you today, one person who believed in me and encouraged me. It is Miss Maple. How can I say enough to thank her? This is the end of reading 5. Effective expression, writing and editing. Mia is writing an argument defending the claim that the ideal of freedom requires risk and sacrifice. Read the draft of her introduction and her notes, and then complete the task or answer the questions. An ideal with a price. In our society, people throw around phrases such as freedom of choice and my rights without too much thought. The most trivial preferences are proclaimed a choice, whether the choice concerns which brand of snack food to buy, which singer to vote for in an internet poll, or which presidential candidate to support. In our culture, everything seems to come down to individual tastes and preferences, however small or insignificant. What people do not seem to appreciate is that freedom in our country is a hard-won gift. It is not something that nature, or the supermarket, gives us free of charge. Freedom is the gift of generations of struggle. In that struggle, those who benefited from the gift often turned right around and gave it to others. This is the end of reading 6.